I've been watching General Hospital for a long time, and lately I can't shake the feeling that something unusually tense is happening beneath the surface. Not just inside the storylines on screen, but around the cast itself. And when I saw the latest reactions surrounding Nancy Lee Grahn and her comments on social media, I started wondering whether this situation could eventually affect Alexis in ways fans are not prepared for. I want to be very clear from the beginning. This is only my personal speculation. I'm not saying anyone is being fired. I'm not saying anything has been confirmed, and I'm definitely not claiming insider information. I'm simply analyzing the atmosphere, the fan reactions, and the direction these situations sometimes go in daytime television. Right now, Alexis feels more important than ever on the canvas of General Hospital. Her emotional connections, her family ties, and her history make her one of those characters the show quietly leans on whenever things become chaotic. That's why this entire situation feels delicate to me. Because whether people agree or disagree with Nancy's online behavior, Alexis herself remains deeply loved by many viewers. I'm one of those viewers too. And honestly, that's what makes this conversation uncomfortable. I don't think Nancy is evil. I don't think she's trying to destroy her career. I also don't think people should be silenced for having opinions. Everyone has the right to speak freely and stand on whatever side they believe in. Nancy has that right too. At the same time, I personally feel she may sometimes go a little too far emotionally in the way she expresses herself online. Not because she's forbidden from speaking, but because public perception can change very quickly now. One emotional post can spread across fan communities like gasoline hitting a spark. That's the part that worries me. Soap operas survive on audience loyalty. Daytime television is almost like a living organism built from fan attachment. And when controversy enters the conversation, even indirectly, things can shift faster than people expect. Again, I'm not predicting doom. I'm just saying I've watched this genre long enough to know that networks often pay attention when online backlash becomes loud enough. What really caught my attention recently is how divided fans seem to be becoming. Some viewers defend Nancy passionately and argue that actors should never be punished for personal opinions. Others seem increasingly frustrated by the intensity of her online tone. And somewhere in the middle are fans like me, who admire Nancy's talent, love Alexis as a character, but still quietly wish things would calm down before the situation grows bigger. Because if I'm being honest, I can absolutely imagine a scenario where producers eventually decide they want less off-screen controversy attached to the show. Not because of politics specifically, but because soap operas tend to avoid becoming the center of prolonged social media wars. General Hospital has survived for decades by keeping viewers emotionally invested in the characters rather than distracted by backstage tension. That's why I keep wondering whether Alexis could eventually be affected narratively if this atmosphere continues. And that thought genuinely scares me. The reason it scares me is because Alexis is not just another supporting figure. She carries emotional history across multiple generations of storylines. When Alexis hurts, entire families on the show feel it. When Alexis spirals emotionally, the writing around her becomes electric. That's rare. Characters like that are hard to replace. But soap operas also have a brutal history of suddenly removing important people when circumstances behind the scenes become difficult. Sometimes it's contract issues. Sometimes it's controversy. Sometimes it's creative disagreement. And sometimes a character simply disappears in a shocking twist nobody expected. So lately, I've started paying closer attention to how Alexis is being positioned in current storylines. I could be completely wrong, but I feel like there's always a possibility writers subtly prepare backup exits for legacy characters long before viewers notice. Not necessarily because they plan to use them immediately, but because daytime writers often protect themselves by keeping multiple doors open. That's where my mind starts racing. I keep thinking about how devastating it would be if Alexis were suddenly written into some tragic storyline meant to permanently remove her from Port Charles. A shocking accident, a medical crisis, a sacrifice for family. Something emotional enough to justify a dramatic farewell if things behind the scenes ever became too complicated. Again, I'm not saying this is happening. I truly hope it never happens. But I can't ignore the possibility completely either. And Honestly, the emotional fallout would be enormous. Characters connected to Alexis would instantly be pulled into darker material. Christina alone could unravel emotionally in ways we haven't seen before. Molly would likely collapse under guilt and grief. Sunny's reaction could become explosive. The ripple effect across the show would be massive because Alexis sits at the emotional crossroads of so many relationships. That's partly why I think General Hospital would hesitate before ever making such a drastic move. Alexis still matters too much. Nancy still matters too much. Even viewers who disagree with her online often admit she remains one of the strongest performers on the show. And maybe that's ultimately what protects her. Talent buys grace in television. History buys patience. Legacy buys second chances. Still, fan pressure is unpredictable. Social media today feels like a storm machine that never powers down. One week people move on, and the next week an old controversy explodes again. I think that unpredictability is what makes longtime viewers nervous. We've seen situations in entertainment change overnight before. Personally, I hope Nancy recognizes how deeply fans care about Alexis and understands why some viewers feel anxious when controversy keeps building. I'm not demanding she change her beliefs. That's not my place. I just think emotional restraint sometimes protects both the actor and the character attached to them, because whether people admit it or not, audiences often blur the line between performer and role. That's dangerous territory for any soap star. And if the backlash ever became large enough, I could imagine producers trying to reduce Alexis's screen time temporarily first, instead of removing her outright. That honestly feels more realistic to me than an immediate firing. Maybe fewer central storylines, maybe longer absences, maybe quieter involvement while the noise dies down. That kind of gradual shift would probably happen before anything dramatic. But even that possibility would disappoint many fans. I think General Hospital knows Alexis still anchors emotional realism in a way newer characters sometimes struggle to achieve. She brings vulnerability, intelligence, sarcasm, heartbreak, and maternal chaos all at once. There's a reason viewers have stayed attached to her for so many years. That's why I genuinely hope cooler heads prevail on every side of this conversation. I hope fans avoid turning disagreement into destruction. I hope Nancy avoids feeding unnecessary online conflict. And I hope the show itself remembers how valuable Alexis remains to the emotional identity of General Hospital. Because from my perspective, losing Alexis would create a hole that would be extremely difficult to fill. At the same time, soap operas thrive on unpredictability. That's the uncomfortable truth. The genre feeds on emotional earthquakes. So part of me keeps wondering if writers are already imagining contingency plans behind closed doors, even if they never intend to use them. In daytime television, preparation is survival. Maybe none of this leads anywhere serious. Maybe this entire controversy fades within weeks and everyone moves on. Honestly, I hope that's exactly what happens. I would much rather continue watching Alexis fight through dramatic family chaos than watch the character disappear because real-world tension became too loud to ignore. But I can't deny that something about the atmosphere lately feels fragile. And whenever General Hospital starts feeling fragile off-screen, I always pay attention to what could happen on-screen next. So now I'm curious what other longtime viewers think. Am I overanalyzing the situation? Or do you also feel nervous about what the future could hold for Alexis if these controversies continue growing?
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.